Hello and welcome to this video. In this video, I'll introduce you to quadratic equations. We'll be learning in this chapter about how to solve quadratic equations. We'll be learning about completing the square and what it will tell us. We'll look into solving equations that have quadratic form. We'll look into quadratic graphs and plotting quadratic equations on graphs. Finally, we'll look into discriminant. Why is it important? And also, in the final chapter, we look at how to model real-life scenarios with quadratic equations. Now, you might be thinking, why did we even learn to factorize quadratic equations? Factorizing quadratic equations help us to rewrite them, for example, and plot the graphs for them. For example, if we say after factorization, we found that the factors were 2x plus 3 and x plus 1. What does this tell us about the graph of this original curve here? Well, it will tell us that it has two roots. Quadratics, by the way, always either have a smiley face or a sad face. I say that without a joke. In this case, because plus 2 and plus x, the signs in front of the coefficients are both positive, it's a smiley face. If one of the signs in front of the x or was negative, or we had a minus sign on the outside, it would have been a sad face. In our case, how do I know what's the coordinates here? These 2 points are called the roots of the equation, and the roots are given when you set the factorized form equal to 0 and you solve it for x. The product of these two brackets is equal to 0. That means either 2x plus 3 is equal to 0 or x plus 1 equals to 0. That means that x here, when you solve this equation, will be negative 3 over 2, and x here, when you solve it equation, the second equation will be minus 1. Now, minus 3 over 2 is more negative than minus 1. Therefore, negative 3 over 2 will be on the left, and negative 1 would be on the right. That means that y-axis is somewhere along here. Alright, I'll show you later on how to find the y-intercept, the intercept where it crosses the y-axis as well. That point is called the y-intercept, and we can also find that point as well. But for now, let's just focus on preliminary knowledge, and we'll talk about all the rest in the following videos. Alright, so I encourage you to pause the video, have a go at all these questions, and then once you've done all of these, I'll show you the answer. Okay, I hope by now you've had a go at these questions. So, once you want to solve the question 1 here, that's a simple linear equation. That will give you the answer there. To solve part 1b, you would have to multiply out the brackets and collect like terms on one side of the equation. Question 1c has actually 2 answers because you're going to take the square root of x after dividing 100 by 4. So there is 2 answers there. Also, in this case, the square root of 64 will have plus and minus 8. So the answer will be either 0 or 16. Alright, so in the previous videos, in the first chapter, we learned how to factorize these expressions. So you should have been able to come up with these answers. If not, go back and watch those videos and come back here again. Alright, so sketching graphs is something that I haven't taught you, but the word sketch means that it doesn't have to be perfect, but you do have to indicate where the x and y intercept are. This graph will have a positive gradient, so it will have a positive and the intercept is minus 6. So you do have to indicate that the graph will cut the y-axis at minus 6, and taking the gradient to be 3, what's 6 times 3? 18. No, You say when you want to know where it cuts the x-axis, the value of y will be 0 on the x-axis. Therefore, you set this graph, you set this equation equal to 0 and solve it for x. You will have x equals to 6 divided by 3 is a 2. So this intercept, the x-intercept, have to be a 2. And that, therefore, the gradient is evident that it's going to be a positive 3. So this is how you sketch a graph. You do need to find the x and y intercept. In the next graph, the gradient will be minus and the intercept is a plus 10. So you draw x and y axis like so. You say it's going to cut the y axis at 10. That's a plus 10 there. Its intercept is 10 and the gradient is minus 2. To find the x-intercept, you say set the y value to 0 and you solve for x. Taking 2x to the side and dividing by 2 will give us a 5. So it has to go through point 5 here. Alright, so I don't have a ruler, but you should do a better job than me with a pencil and a ruler. Next graph, you can rearrange to figure out what the gradient is. Alright, so if I rearrange this graph, I'll have 18 minus x divided by 2. That's 9 minus x over 2. The gradient would be a minus a half and the y-intercept is 9. Alright, so there's another way to plot this kind of a graph. You can say when y is 0, I will have x equals to 18. So y is 0 when we cross the x-axis. So it will have an intercept of 18. And when x is 0, you substitute 0 for x and you end up with 2y equals to 18, so y is 9. As we previously found out, the intercept was 9. So you join these points with a straight line. Then to sketch this graph, well, that's going to be a smiley face, a quadratic that goes through the origin, because the origin is 0, 0. So you just have to point out the intercept is 0 as well. So this is how you sketch graphs. Make sure you label your x and y axis and indicate that you know what you're doing. Alright, to solve the inequalities in question 4, you solve them like an equation. Here, to get x alone on one side of the inequality sign, you subtract 8 from both sides. So you end up with 11 minus 8, which is 3. So x is less than 3. Then for the next question, let me plot these. Alright, for the next question, you add 5 and divide by 2. 18 divided by 2 is 9. So x will always be greater than or equal to 9. In the next question, you expand the bracket and you collect x's on one side. So 2x on the left, and you will have 5 on the right. So dividing both sides by 2 will give you x is less than or equal to 2.5. And finally, here you could say you swap in x with 11. So say 4 minus 11 is less than x. So x is always bigger than minus 7. Alright, so I hope you've had a go at these questions. I'll see you in the next video.